Hey, this is John. Time for a new Patreon exclusive build series. And for this one, we're going to be building a Citadel Space Marine Rhino. It's an armored personnel carrier used in the Warhammer 40K universe. I thought I'd start off by taking a look at some of the sprues because quite a few folks have contacted me and said they're interested in Warhammer, but they've never seen any of the kits in terms of the sprues and you know, what are they like and that kind of thing. So I thought this series would cover a fairly basic kit and kind of show you what they're about. Now, one of the things that you'll find in any Warhammer kit is they have great mold detail. I don't know if you can see that part there clearly, but just the sculptings and castings are really, really good. This Rhino APC is a fairly simple kit, but even the detail that's in this one is just very good. Because it's all sci-fi, it's for a tabletop game, it's all made up nonsense. The panel lines, the rivet detail, the raised detail, it's all fairly exaggerated, which, you know, if this were on a real world kind of armored vehicle, it would look really odd, but for the purposes of this universe, it works very nicely. So the parts, there's not a lot of parts. 4 sprues, actually 3 sprues in this one, and comes with a figure that you can have sticking out through the hatch, a gun on the top, and it's fairly simple construction. So it's a very, very easy to build, quick building kit. That's it. There's not a whole lot of parts to it, but I think they're a whole lot of fun to build and paint. One of the things to note about just about any Citadel kit is the runners, the sprues, the sprue gates are really kind of heavy. It's very thick plastic in most cases, and if you're used to using, say, God hand nippers, the really fragile ones, you're going to need something else. A little trick I do is whenever I replace my old nippers with new ones, I take the old ones and I cleverly label them old, and I keep these for just utility kind of cuts and thicker plastic cuts. So for stuff like this Citadel, which is just a big honking chunk of plastic, these cut through nicely, but I'm not worried about breaking the tips. These are actually the low-end God hand nippers. They're very good. I think they're the best of the basic nippers I've ever used. This is what I continually work with. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull off a few parts and show some pre-construction and a few things to keep your eye on when you're building these, and then we'll see where we go from there. All right, with a few exceptions, you know, some turret pieces and some other ancillary bits that go on the outer hull of the kit, this is all the parts. You've got a couple of side panels that go together, the top, the bottom, some hatches, and your tracks. What I'm going to do, I'm not going to show it all on camera, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by filing off all of these nub marks, and I actually use a metal file for this because the plastic is very thick. I'll take my nippers and trim it down a bit, and then just file it down with this file, and in a few places I may grab a sanding stick if I need it to be a little gentler. But for the most part, you can go at this stuff pretty hard and it will take it. One thing to note is the tracks are very simple design, easy to glue on. I recommend gluing these on to the model after most of the painting and weathering is done. I'll show that in later steps. But I actually leave them on the sprue to paint them, and I'll show the way that I cut them. But the portion away from these cleats, in other words, this side, is going to be what faces the outside of the model. And so what I actually do is I cut off this side of the sprue and trim that down, and then leave it on this portion of the sprue so that I can easily paint it, hold it, move it around, weather it, do all of those things. And then when I cut it off at the end, I can put a touch of paint on that nub mark, but because it's going to be underneath the model and on the inside, it really won't be visible. So it makes painting and weathering these tracks much easier, I think. So let me get to work on doing some of this parts preparation, and I'll show you the pre-assembly that I do before I go in and actually start painting the interior. All right, I've got the track parts cleaned up like I talked about, and as I said, these cleats go towards the inside of the vehicle. So with this edge now smooth and cleaned up, I can paint and detail these off of the model and then add them in. I don't add them in at the very end, but I do most of the weathering before I add these, and then the final weathering where I'll need to weather the road wheels and the tracks together, I add them right before that. And I forgot to mention it earlier, this will be actually the third one of these kits I've built. Citadel does a great job of taking, say for example, this piece here. It's the basis for the Rhino APC, but there's also another part that can fit up here. This kit's going to have two doors, but there's another part that can fit up here that's got a big machine gun that goes on the back. That's called a Razorback. I built that one. Then there's another piece that goes here and a turret that sticks on top, and that's the Predator tank. So this frame is actually the basis for several kits. So this will be my third one. So that's why I kind of wanted to go into some build strategies. Now I plan to build the interior, which while it is fairly simple, I think it's fun to build. It's just a few pieces. You've got your ramp that lowers down here, and your seats and interior, the floor, and this back wall with this really nicely detailed console there and a little gun on it. So I wanted to do this, one, because it's fun, but also to demonstrate some weathering techniques that I use in building these kind of kits. And I thought that might be valuable to show. I hope it is. And but if you're building it with the idea of painting the interior, then you will want to do these first, separate like this, and then bring it all together. Now, if you're going to build the kit buttoned up, you can take all of these parts and glue them together in about 5 minutes, and you're ready to go. So if you don't have any plans to do the interior, this is a fast building little kit. But I think it's fun to do these, so that's one of the things I'm going to be showing right off the bat. Now, having said all of that, there are a few things that can be assembled ahead of time, and one of them is these sidewall, these sponsons, side pieces, side thingies. I'm not sure what you're gonna what you call them, but they go together real simply like that. Now this is not a snap tight kit. I'm just showing how they go together. I'll actually use some glue in there, but I always put these together first because it doesn't hurt in the painting of the interior or the exterior to have those together. I go ahead and I glue in these doors, which are fold down ramps. Now if you wanted to, because it shows interior detail here, if you wanted to have one of these ramps down, go ahead. It's, you know, it's your call. I have seen some modelers hinge these. They went to great effort to rig in some hinges so that these would go up and down. I'm not that motivated, so I'm going to go ahead and glue those parts in here, making sure to get them on the correct side. Generally I see these steps going up this door on the left side of the vehicle, so I'll put those there. I'm also going to glue in the doors that go on the top of the vehicle, just like that. I'll glue them in here. If you're painting and detailing the interior, remember to do the roof. I forgot that one time and had to go back and take care of that. And there's a piece on this front hatch here that pops in place here, and I'll get that glued in. And this level of pre-assembly right here, if you're going to paint the interior, is all you need to do. And you can see just by adding this floor in and this and that, that's the model. So it's not a difficult model to build. It's one of the cheaper Citadel kits. Games Workshop prices their models not by how much plastic is in the box, but by according to its value on the battlefield, I guess you'd say. It's a tabletop game. So you can have a kit that's this big. This is about $35, but you can get a figure that's roughly this size, but a lot more fancy stuff hanging all over him, and he can be $50. So their pricing model for most scale modelers is a little weird. Some of the stuff is expensive, but there's a wide variety of things, and there's loads of kits that are under 50 bucks. And again, I think they're worth building. They're a lot of fun and drives rivet counters crazy. So I'm going to get these pieces glued in and do a little priming, and then come back and show you the results. All right, one construction note I wanted to point out, interrupt the video briefly. A lot of these tabs that fit the pegs, where the pegs will fit, have a little bit of a lip on them from the mold, and I found the fit of the final product is much better if I just grab my file and bring those down level with the top of the hole there. So I just wanted to point that out because that can actually cause a few fit issues. It doesn't look like a lot of space, but when you put it all together and try to get the tracks on, you can have just a little bit of a gap. So one thing to note if you're building this kit. All right, I have the basic assemblies glued together, and they're ready for priming and painting the interior. Another note on construction, if you do want the interior to be seen well, this back ramp hinges in here, and it will lower down and you can get a look inside, but it's a little dark. So if you would like to be able to see it a little better, I've not done this, but you can glue these two doors together along here, the middle line here, and not glue them into the top of the upper deck, and you can just pick it up. It'll sit loose, but you know, if you just want to be able to see the inside of it, you can pop it right off and look inside and see what it looks like in there. But I've got the two side sections assembled and glued, and the doors in and glued. Now what I'll do is I'll prime here, 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 this, and this, so that I can get to work on the interior. All right, I've got the interior surfaces primed and they're ready for paint. I used Tamiya rattle can primer for this. Normally I'm a Badger Stynylrez guy, and I love the primer. I have no problem with the primer, but man, it is just so quick and easy to go out there in the garage and go psh, 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 and it's done. And the Tamiya primer is great. So I think I'm going to be investing a little more in rattle can primers, because for stuff like this where it's just big flat open surfaces, it's hard to beat. There's no airbrush cleanup. There's none of that. So something to think about in your own building. But I'm gonna the next steps will be painting the interior and weathering the interior. One thing that I am trying to do in this series, and let me know what you think, is I'm trying to keep it a little shorter. My goal is to keep each video under 30 minutes. I know, and I apologize, I'm sorry, I have a tendency to go really long, but I like to cram a lot of stuff into a video. So I thought, well, how about if I just break it up into more steps, have a few more videos, and maybe a little less of a chunk to watch. So with that in mind, I'm going to call this section of this build finished, and for the video. And the next one, I'll show the full painting and weathering of the interior. Normally I would just drive on and do that, and it would be another half hour, 45 minutes. But you know, I'm hearing the feedback. Hey, how about some shorter videos? So I'm gonna call this a day for this video. Again, though, these Warhammer Citadel kits are really, really fun to build. There's really no rules. If you're not, and I don't play the game. I couldn't tell you hardly a thing about the game. I know you roll dice and somebody says I killed you and somebody says no you didn't. Much like we did when we were kids. But I really enjoy building these kits. They're a lot of fun. So I hope that this simple build of this Rhino APC will give you a bit of a flavor of what they're like, and perhaps prompt you to go try one yourself. So as always, thank you so much for being a patron. This is a Patreon exclusive video, so please don't share the link, the YouTube link. If you want to share it with somebody, share the link to the Patreon page from which this video is embedded. And but again, thank you for being a patron, and I really appreciate your support. And I will talk to you later. Happy days to you, friends. Bye-bye.